Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping into a really heavy but incredibly important book, Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. This book, it asks one of the toughest questions you can imagine, and it does so because the man who wrote it lived through one of the darkest times in human history.
You know, the philosopher Nietzsche had this quote. He said that if you have a why, a real purpose to live, you can put up with almost anyhow.
So that's a great thought, right? But what happens when your how isn't just a hardship? What happens when it's an absolute nightmare? I mean, that's the terrifying question right at the center of Frankl's work. What happens when your life is systematically designed to just break you, your body, your mind, your entire spirit?
And to even begin to answer that, we have to look at Viktor Frankl. See, he wasn't just a victim. He was a trained psychiatrist who survived 3 years in Nazi concentration camps, including Auschwitz. And he didn't just survive. He used that horrific experience to understand the absolute limits of human resilience.
So let's get into the first part of his story, surviving the abyss. What makes Frankl's account so powerful, so unique, is that he didn't just live through it. He was observing it the whole time. As a psychiatrist, he was watching himself, watching his fellow prisoners, with this almost clinical eye, trying to analyze the psychological journey through this unimaginable suffering.
And what he saw was that people went through these 3 distinct psychological stages. First, there was the initial shock of arriving at the camp. A total state of disbelief, often with this kind of crazy hope that, it won't be that bad, what he called a delusion of reprieve. Then, that shock gave way to a deep apathy, a total numbing of emotions. It sounds awful, but it was actually a necessary defense mechanism to just get through the day. And then finally, there was the third phase, liberation. And you'd think that would be pure joy, right? But for many, it was incredibly difficult. A really disillusioning return to life and, to feeling anything at all.
I mean, think about it. The moment they arrived, everything was taken away. Everything that defined who they were. Their possessions, their valuables, wedding rings, even their life's work. Frankl had a manuscript taken from him. Their identity was just erased. They went from being a person with a name and a story to just a number tattooed on their arm.
But even after all that, after being stripped of literally everything, Frankl realized there was still one thing left, one final thing that they could never, ever take away.
And this right here, this is the core insight of the entire book. This is what he called the last of the human freedoms.
I mean, listen to this quote. The guards could control your entire world, where you slept, what you ate, if you lived or died. But what they couldn't touch was your inner response. Frankl saw it with his own eyes. He saw men walking through the huts, comforting others, giving away their very last piece of bread. They proved that even in the middle of hell, you still had the freedom to choose your attitude, your inner stance. That was yours and yours alone.
And this discovery, this wasn't just some nice philosophical thought for getting through a tough time. This profound insight, which was literally forged in the fire of the camps, it became the foundation for a whole new way of thinking about psychotherapy.
Yeah, he called it logotherapy. Now, that word logos is Greek, and it doesn't just mean word. Its deeper meaning is, meaning. And that's exactly what his therapy was all about.
Okay, so to really get what logotherapy is, it helps to see how it's different from the other big ideas in psychology at the time. You had Freud, right? He thought our main drive in life was the will to pleasure. Then you had Adler, who said no, it's the will to power. But Frankl came along and said, you're both missing the point. He proposed that our most basic, fundamental drive as human beings is the will to meaning.
So, what happens when that will to meaning gets blocked? When you can't find a purpose? Well, Frankl said people fall into what he called an existential vacuum. And you've probably felt it or seen it. It's that feeling of emptiness, of meaninglessness. He even called it the Sunday neurosis. That feeling when the busy week is over, the distractions are gone, and you're left just thinking, is this it? Is this all there is?
Okay, so if we're all driven to find meaning, the big question is, where do we find it, right? Frankl was really clear on this. A therapist can't just hand you your life's meaning on a silver platter. It's something you have to discover for yourself. But he did point out 3 main paths we could take to find it.
And this is where he kind of flips the whole script. He said we're asking the wrong question. We shouldn't be asking what is the meaning of my life. Instead, we need to realize that life is asking us a question. And we answer it not with words, but with our actions, through these 3 paths.
And these are really the practical ways his theory plays out. First, you can find meaning through creation,
by making something or doing a good deed, basically in what you give to the world. Second, you can find it through experience, by what you take from the world. Appreciating beauty or experiencing love for another person. And then there's the third and maybe the most profound one. You can find meaning in the attitude you choose when you're facing suffering that you absolutely cannot change.
And that third path, wow, that's his most radical, most powerful insight. The idea that even when you are totally powerless to change your situation, let's say a terminal illness or a devastating loss, you still have one last freedom. The freedom to choose how you face it. And by facing that suffering with courage, with dignity, you can turn a personal tragedy into a real human triumph.
So this all leads us to Frankl's final challenge, his ultimate message. It's not just about finding meaning. It's about taking responsibility and tapping into what he called the defiant power of the human spirit.
Look, he wasn't some naive optimist telling everyone to just be happy. No way. He talked about tragic optimism. What does that mean? It's the ability to say yes to life, not by pretending the bad stuff doesn't exist, but by saying yes in spite of it. In spite of the pain, the guilt, the fact that we all die. It's about finding meaning even with all that tragedy baked in.
For Frankl, freedom was only half the story. He had this brilliant idea. He said the Statue of Liberty on the East Coast is great, but it should be balanced by a statue of responsibility on the West Coast. Because freedom, if it's not lived with a sense of purpose and accountability for our choices, well, it's in danger of just becoming random and meaningless.
What is to give light must endure burning? That phrase just captures it all, doesn't it? It suggests that our ability to find meaning, to create light in the world, often doesn't happen despite our struggles, it happens because of them. The burning is what creates the light.
And so his work leaves all of us with a really profound question. It's not some abstract philosophical problem, it's a personal challenge. For right here, right now, in your life, with your circumstances, with all your challenges, what is life asking of you?
At the end of the day, that's the final, powerful challenge from a man who stared into the absolute abyss and found a reason to keep going. Say yes to life, in spite of everything. It's a call for us to affirm our own existence, with all its joys and its sorrows, and to find our own meaning, no matter what.